TFD Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the show where we break down popular science into easily digestible and actionable information to give you the blueprint to be a high performer in your life. Today, I'll be chatting to TFD Performance Dietitian Ryan Hasell. We'll be breaking down what you need to know about Beta-Alanine, which is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated performance supplements on earth. Ryan breaks down what it is, what it does, how to take it, and who is going to benefit most from it. This is another great bite-sized episode, so let's get to it. All right, we are live for another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. So joined again by one of our performance dietitians coming back for the second time. We've got Mr. Ryan Hasell, aka the Dojo Dietitian. So Dojo, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Geordie. Good to be back. Keen to do another pod.
So what we're going to keep doing with this one, we want these to be short, sharp, super educational listens where we give you guys answers to some of the questions that we get asked most about. Last episode, we did do creatine. We gave you a really succinct summary of creatine. Today is going to be another supplement that we always get asked about. And quite frankly, it's probably one that I recommend to 98.5% of all my clients, and that's Beta-Alanine. I've used Beta-Alanine for years. My clients have used it for as long as I've been practicing. I really, really like it. Dojo, what's your experience with Beta-Alanine? Give us a little rundown.
Yeah, look, it's one of those things, like some people love it, some people hate it, the tingling and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like from a performance perspective, I think it's awesome. I love getting my guys on it. And yeah, as you said, it's definitely one that comes up with a lot of questions. Not too many people are sure how it works. So hopefully we can go through that a little bit in a bit of detail here and help with that understanding.
Yeah, obviously something we're going to talk about is obviously the dose equals a poison, like anything in nutrition science. And Beta-Alanine has provided me with countless funny stories over the years of people who have just gone to try to do what I would call a heroic dose of Beta-Alanine, and they've either triple scooped their teaspoon. And I had one funny story of a girl that was like, "Oh, this doesn't work. I don't feel anything. I'm going to take triple." And I said, "Please don't do that. Please don't do that." And then I ended up getting a message from her boyfriend, and she was like saying that she felt so tingly. She was like, "Call an ambulance, please call an ambulance." It's like,
yeah. Have you heard the butt tingles one? I've heard some people, a bit of a side effect, they can get the tingling butthole from a bit too much Beta-Alanine. So
I haven't heard of the internal sphincter going tingly, but maybe that's just a person to person thing. But Dojo, let's keep this short. Yep. Let's keep this succinct. Let's get into it. Take it away. Everything you need to know about Beta-Alanine.
Sweet. So I've got a couple of slides similar to the creatine one. So I'll chuck them up and we can run through it all. So Beta-Alanine. Similar to creatine, Beta-Alanine is a naturally occurring substance. We produce it in our own bodies, and it's actually an amino acid. So I'm sure we'll probably get to amino acids and protein and all that kind of stuff on a podcast soon. But for now, like it's kind of easy to just understand as like amino acids are kind of like the building blocks of proteins. So Beta-Alanine, like the word beta, is just like referring to the variant of it. So there's a couple of different types of alanine, and in particular, Beta-Alanine is the one that we'll focus on today because that's the one that we'll see some of these performance benefits and stuff from. So getting into those benefits, some of the potential things that we can see with taking Beta-Alanine is increased anaerobic exercise performance. So anaerobic, we're talking about sort of moderate intensity to high intensity exercise that kind of lasts somewhere between 1 to 4 minutes generally. Now, in saying that, there are also some studies showing that it increases aerobic exercise performance. So we're talking more like endurance exercise, anywhere over 4 minutes up to like half an hour, a couple of hours, if you're Geordie running on a treadmill. And that's potentially coming from the fact that it's just improving the aerobic sort of production of energy underneath that's going on. So when we're using energy systems, we're never using like exclusively one. We're kind of using a combination, but one will dominate. But potentially it's bringing those anaerobic benefits to your endurance exercise. Now, because of that, similar to some of the other supplements, one of the other things we see is improvements to adaptations from training. So obviously, if we're able to train at a higher level, the benefits of that training are going to be better, and then that's going to like cumulatively improve our performance over time. And the main way that it sort of impacts exercise through that aerobic system is by reducing our time to fatigue. And I'll get to that in a minute about like how that works, but essentially like it's going to extend the period of time between when you start doing the exercise and when you start getting that burning feeling in your muscles, and that like decreased ability to like produce force or lift weight or, you know, explode and do all those things. Now, outside of performance benefits in sport, beta-alanine actually is starting to be looked at in terms of like a health perspective now as well. And there are some sort of like long-standing, I guess, like ideas around things that it can help with in the body. And that's mainly as an antioxidant and a buffer. So that kind of goes along the lines of other things that you hear about antioxidants. So it's potentially helpful with like being like an anti-aging sort of substance, not in that like you're not going to get older, but just some of the damage that happens to your body over time can be reduced by like the antioxidant qualities. And now that also means that there is some potential for protective benefits against things like, you know, degenerative diseases. So things like atherosclerosis, diabetes, all of these things where like different systems in your body start to break down over time. Beta-alanine, it's looking like in the science that it could be helpful in protecting against some of these diseases. And if the people are interested, this is probably something that we can dive into in another podcast in a bit more detail around how that all works. But for today, we'll just focus on the sport side of things. So we've got the energy systems here. We talked about, if you've seen the creatine podcast, the first line there, the red one, that's your really short-acting energy systems, and that's primarily your ATP phosphocreatine system, and that one burns up within the first few seconds of exercise. As that one comes down, then we start to produce energy through glycolysis in what we call like anaerobic exercise. So without oxygen, we're able to burn foods or energy sources such as like glucose in order to produce that ATP that we need for energy. And that system is the one that we're going to be focusing on today. And that's the one where beta-alanine has the most effect. So how does it like produce these effects? So it's not actually the beta-alanine itself that produces all these positive effects, but the beta-alanine is part of a process in creating a molecule called carnosine. And carnosine is like where the real money is in terms of these benefits. So beta-alanine is what we call a rate limiting factor. And that just means like the amount of carnosine that your body can produce depends on how much beta-alanine you have. So the carnosine itself is actually sort of a combination of L-histidine and beta-alanine. So they're two different molecules. They combine to make carnosine, but really the amount of carnosine is limited by the amount of beta-alanine you eat. So there are studies like you can just eat carnosine or supplement carnosine, and it is a popular supplement on the market, but it's about 40% as effective as just taking pure beta-alanine for that reason of beta-alanine being the most important factor in that production. So how does carnosine then help with that exercise, reducing time to fatigue and increase our performance? Well, it centers around this idea of acidity in the muscles. So when we exercise, we produce hydrogen ions or acid within the muscle. They start to build, and that acidity actually causes a number of issues. So like obviously the more obvious ones are things like, you know, the burning feeling, the pain and that sort of stuff, but it actually has some effects, on the muscle's ability to actually contract. So like outside of actually just feeling the pain and like being like affected by the pain to stop, the muscles themselves will actually not be able to contract as much or produce as much force if the pH or like if the muscle cells themselves begin to be too acidic. So where carnosine fits into this is carnosine acts as a buffer, which means it can help to pick up some of the hydrogen that's being produced, or some of that acid, and therefore reduce the acidity within the cell. That means like the more hydrogen we're able to soak up with the carnosine, the longer it's going to take before that builds up to a level where the muscle is not as functional. And that way we're able to kind of push that time between starting exercise and kind of burning out, I guess. So that's kind of how beta-alanine works and how it works as carnosine. So let's talk a little bit about how to actually use beta-alanine from a practical point of view. So in terms of dosages, it seems to be that the most effective dose is somewhere between like 4 and 6 grams per day, and like probably better off starting from a lower dose, as you said, Jordy, and like building that up to kind of reduce some of those other symptoms that come along with it. But there also seems to be this kind of trend in the research where there's like what we call like an additive performance bonus when you're able to supplement it with other supplements. So for example, creatine, another supplement that we've talked about, if you have creatine and beta-alanine together, there is potential that it could create an additive performance increase that is like then taking each of them like separately on their own. So like the combined effect of taking both together is actually a little bit more than if you're just taking them separately, if that makes sense. And then so the last thing to touch on, and one thing we kind of like had a bit of a joke about at the start, is this paresthesia. And that's kind of like a sciencey way of saying like that tingling feeling that you get when you have too much of it or in too much of a concentrated dose. Now the tingling feeling, it's harmless, or as far as we know so far, it seems to be harmless. But for people that find it annoying and they're not like comfortable working out with that feeling, one thing that can be helpful is to split the dose up. So if you have, say, if your dose is 4 grams over the day, splitting it into like 2 grams in the morning and then 2 grams in the afternoon can be a pretty effective way in reducing any of those symptoms. And the potential benefit, like, so in building up the carnosine levels within the muscle and that kind of thing, it's still going to be the same as, or it seems to be the same as if you were to take like the 4 gram dose in one hit. So there doesn't really seem to be any difference between smashing it in one go and splitting it up. So if those, the tingling sensations and all that kind of thing is annoying, you're going to get just as much benefit from splitting that dose up. Yeah, so that basically covers most of the info on beta-alanine. What do you reckon, Jordy? Do you think the listeners will have any other questions or?
I think one thing I like to add, and every time I talk to someone about beta-alanine, is because I always use it, we as a team, we always use it stacking it, say with like creatine, but we use it for a lot of our pre-workouts, right? And I always get this question, oh, what pre-workouts do you recommend? What pre-workout? And a lot of people, when they take a pre-workout, there's 2 things that they're taking it for. One is the caffeine hit, which a lot of people are just caffeine addicts, right? Like, and they just want to get that buzz. The second is they want that tingly feeling, and they don't understand that beta-alanine is the thing that's giving them that tingly feeling. The thing is, when you take a pre-workout that's just in a tub, I don't know, back in my day, it was like Jack 3D and Mesoborph and all that stuff. And like, I don't know what the big ones are now, but
I think Jack had a couple other supplements in there as well.
Yeah, they were pretty bad back in the day. But it's so hard to control. Like Jack 3D or whatever is a great example of it. Like you have no idea what's in it. And 2, you can't control any of the dosage. And like we always say in sports nutrition, the dose equals the poison. The dose is what's going to determine whether that supplement is effective for you or whether it's going to, give you tingly butt and you're not going to be able to train. So that's why we always say, take these separately. If you want a pre-workout, don't go to the sup store and buy Ghost Hella Jacked or whatever you want to buy and start scooping that. If you want to get that tingly feeling, take your beta-alanine, slowly find what your acceptable dose is, up to 6 grams, take it twice a day. And if you want to take caffeine, use some measurements that we use, grams per kilogram to find your own individual dosage. You don't want to just be taking, scoops on scoops. That's literally how people get, I don't want to say it does happen, but people do die. Like you hear people who take like 20 scoops of these, like crazy kids in the US, and their heart just goes nuts. Or even people who take 5 and they end up in the ER because they just took 5 times 300 or 5 times 500 milligrams of caffeine. So I always say this to everyone when we talk about beta-alanine. It's probably going to give you most benefit before your workout so you can dose it properly. But again, you don't have to take it before your workout. It's just that a lot of people, if they're going to get that tingly feeling, I find early in the morning, it kind of wakes them up, or before a workout, after a long day at work or whatever. It's like that, okay, I'm awake, and it just becomes that psychological thing. I'm about to work out.
Yeah. And I think with the pre-workouts as well, like there's sort of like a point of not even just diminishing returns when you're like scooping that much of it to try and get like doses that feel like they're working or whatever, but you actually start to get like decreases in performance when you start going overboard with it. So like that's probably like where people will find, like if you're hitting a bit of a cap in terms of like you're just feeling fried or whatever going into a workout, you probably need to step it back. And as you said, like just buying the individual ingredients and kind of mixing up your own can be a super good way of like making sure it's tailored to what you need.
I know you touched on this, Dojo, but just the last thing, is it 4 weeks that you want to take this for? Is there an on period, an off period, or what's the science around that?
Yeah, so the like timelines, the science is still kind of building up here. We don't know like fully if it's something that needs to be like cycled off of. I mean, like based on the mechanism, it probably wouldn't make sense that you would need to cycle off, because it's kind of like creatine, right? You're just trying to build up stores of carnosine in your muscles. So from that like train of thought, it makes sense that just taking it continuously would be smart, and it would like maintain those performance benefits over time. But the one thing to kind of consider there is like safety. So it seems to be like a pretty safe supplement, and like it's basically eating like an offshoot of a protein, right? So it's not like it doesn't look like it could be potentially dangerous, but we just don't know in terms of like long-term like continual dosages over time how safe that is. Like we don't know if it's producing some sort of downstream like metabolite that is somehow harmful and like could be building up over time. The studies just aren't there yet, but from the evidence that is there, it looks like it's pretty safe. And yeah, as you said, about 3 to 4 weeks before we start seeing a lot of those benefits, and that's from saturating those carnosine stores. And it seems to be that it's something that is pretty safe to take into the long term.
Yeah, I guess if we're doing risk versus reward and you're comparing beta-alanine to whatever crazy pre-workout you're getting in your sub store that has about 400 ingredients in there with 398 you can't pronounce, I think beta-alanine probably wins. The last thing I want to ask Dojo, dietary carnosine, are there some ways that guys can get that as well? Is it beneficial to try and increase your dietary levels as well as the sub?
For sure. So carnosine, so this is, a lot of it is like really similar to creatine, but like the mechanism is obviously different. But so carnosine itself is found in muscle cells, like that's primarily where you find it. And then so therefore like in your food, it's primarily going to come from animal products. So things like meat, fish, poultry, all that kind of stuff, like where you're eating things that come from animals, that's where you're going to get carnosine from. And so if you're having enough, so sort of, I guess, animal-based protein sources in your diet, then you'll be likely getting a fair bit of carnosine, which I guess makes it a little bit more important than for like vegan or vegetarian athletes to be making sure they are supplementing this to keep those stores topped up.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm getting at, is because we get a lot of plant-based athletes. And don't get me wrong, like I think we're all sick of having this argument. And if you're a plant-based athlete, you can do just as well. You just have to take some precautions with your nutrition. One of those ones that we always talk about is, yeah, you probably want to make an effort to get a bit more carnosine to help this whole process going out. But outside of that, I think that's a pretty good summary, Dojo, of beta-alanine. So I think we'll wrap that one up there, and we'll keep this going. If you guys are listening and there's any supplements or any physiology or little bits of science in the nutrition world that you want us to break down, you want Dojo to go over in a very succinct and very effective fashion, just shoot us a message on social media, shoot us an email, reach out to us, whatever way you can, let us know, because that's what these are all about. We want these to be jam-packed full of bite-sized information. But there you have it, everything you need to know about beta-alanine. Dojo, I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Geordie. See you next time.
And there it is, another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. And there is a bite-sized summary of one of my favorite performance supplements, Beta-Alanine. If you enjoyed this episode, then be sure to leave us a 5-star review, and if there is anything else you would like to hear us break down, please send us a message on social media and let us know. This podcast will be available through the podcast app, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and if you follow along our socials at _fight dietitian, you can see all of the best bits from our podcast episodes. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you guys for the next episode of TFD Performance Podcast.